Yes, love's a secret weapon. Yeah!
Hi, I'm Donna Loren.
And I'm Dr Adam Gerace.
And you are listening to Love's a Secret Weapon podcast. Chapter 18, Dream World. Chapter 18, Part 3, Dream World. 48 years is a very long time to be lied to. However, as soon as I knew the truth, I started to breathe differently. The shock attacking my nerves and throwing me into this physical illness was like a stepping stone to make sense of my life. It began a very long, arduous process. It also took having someone who was willing to listen and to accept the process that I had to go through. During the time I was healing from the yaws, Jared and I began to make our mornings a time to have lengthy conversations. Perhaps initially they were more one-way conversations where I could talk, think aloud, and express my feelings and even cry. It was a space where I knew that I wouldn't be criticized or feel like I was making a mistake or doing anything wrong. It takes years to change your mind if you think that something is a certain way. The very idea of the truth helped me erase the tape that was playing in my mind, telling me that Maury was my father. Slowly but surely, the new thoughts that he indeed was not my father became my new thought pattern. As I began to trust myself more, that information took hold and was woven into the fiber of my being. With Jared, I had a person who was willing to listen and let me discover my own truth. He did this daily, and this has continued to be something that we do, with very few exceptions. My feelings of betrayal and whatever anger I had felt until then really became clear to me. Since I had never been good at expressing these feelings, I had to work through it. Maybe it was just the environment that I was living in, which meant that I had to learn to become very mindful. Mother Nature had her way with me. I could certainly relate to Henry David Thoreau dropping out and living on Walden Pond, communing with nature to write his book, Civil Disobedience. I could never walk barefoot in my house, or I might step on a centipede. And I had to open a door quickly to leave or enter the house so that the mosquitoes wouldn't consume me. Going on long walks with Jared helped me build my endurance. Kohala is the windiest place on the Big Island, where windmills were built to make use of this alternative energy source. We would go walking on an airstrip right near a cliff that was a good 100 or more feet above the ocean with winds like you couldn't believe. This area was very sacred, the site of a heiau, the birthplace of Kamehameha I, the king of Hawaii. Just being in the elements and going for walks was extremely challenging. The dirt roads were sometimes rutted from the carts that had traveled through to the sugar plantations, and when the rains came, there were big mud puddles. Traversing these very rustic and rocky trails and road pathways, I still chose to walk in my platform cork sandals that wrapped around my ankles. They were my fashion statement, along with these tall Japanese woodblock shoes I'd march around in. Sometimes we'd have to climb over a cattle gate. Eventually, we would reach a spot where the land was all dry and kiave trees grew. The trees have thorns in them, and you couldn't wear flip-flops because if you stepped on one of those thorns, it would shoot right through the bottom. My platforms actually were very practical in that respect. The ocean was so clear where you could see pools of angelfish and sometimes whales not too far off the shore doing breaches. It was all very wild and untamed. The old Hawaii that the resorts or industry had not invaded, and the people cherished and wanted to preserve. A very special place on this planet, and it was my special place to begin to purify and to cleanse. Intermingling my tears with the ocean, juxtaposition to swimming in the shame of my mother's womb, was an extremely important part of my healing. Letting the ocean rock me gently fulfilled the need in me to nurture my own inner child. Every time I would go to the ocean, I would call it church. And so, in Hawaii, Jared and I made Sundays our day to go to church. We would leave around 8:30 in the morning and wouldn't return home until sunset. Living at the elevation that we did, the ocean was our place to dry out from the week's rain. I had visited the waters of Hawaii many times before starting in the mid-70s, but was never confident going in because I wasn't a strong swimmer. Now that I was living there, I had to make friends with the ocean. When we would go to the beach in the beginning, Jared would run toward the water and jump in carefree, swimming out, and then he'd kind of egg me on to come and join him. Fortunately, I was never intimidated by that, so I would stay where I felt safe. I want to say that I held on to my own truth, but it was my fears as well that kept me from moving too far from the shore. The truth is that I wasn't proud that the ocean scared me. The thought of being in the water that sharks inhabited just completely terrified me. A couple of months after we had moved from the mainland, our friends Kindy and Sherry came over for dinner. Here I am, a newbie, and Kindy was born in a canyon at the end of the road and grew up, as did many generations of his family, on the ocean. Fearless, Kindy began to tell me a story. A friend of his was doing her daily swim not too far from the shore when she came out of the water and noticed that she had all these burns on her leg. She had told him that a shark was swimming next to her and kept bumping into her. She just kept swimming. Kindy then told me, "Now, when you're at the ocean and you see the trees near the shore with white blossoms, you know it's shark season." That was my introduction. It didn't instill fear in me, and he was trying to teach me, not scare me, because I already had fear of sharks being in those waters. Nevertheless, hearing it from a living legend and a Hawaiian native gave it authenticity. The progression of making friends with the ocean was slow, and I really did not want to be intimidated with this fear that I had to deal with. I'd just be content sitting on the shore and let the waves slap over me and be like a child. I was okay with that and could do it for hours. Do you know how long you can hang out in the sun if you're sitting in the ocean and the waves come spilling over you? It's amazing. I do have to title myself the chicken of the sea, not to disillusion the beach party fans. I really did surprise myself, though, year after year. I kept going deeper and deeper into the water. When I saw that the tide was really far out, I would take advantage of that and just walk way out until I started floating. To this day, wherever I am when I look at the ocean, I love it and know that it's very therapeutic. But I know that when I put my foot in the water, I'm a guest. Our time at the ocean was a quiet time. Sometimes Jared would go on long walks, and I'd be left alone. If you're present in the moment, you really do have what I would describe as a holy experience, feeling like you're spiritually connected and communing with the sand and the water. The sand on the beach rested on black lava rocks, lava that had flowed from the volcano to the ocean. There were little sinkholes, and when you'd step into one, you were standing in freezing cold, unsalted, underground spring water that finds its way to the ocean. These are extremely healing waters, and this is when nature really talks to you. When you're walking in the sand and all of a sudden your foot sinks into freezing cold water that isn't salty, next to black lava, and in the distance, there is the mountain that it came from over 200 years ago when the volcano erupted. Essentially, our time by the ocean once a week would be very rejuvenating. I still have a tremendous need to be by the water.
I think that's such an evocative reading, Donna. This idea for people who have perhaps not visited Hawaii, just the importance of being by the ocean and that sacred experience that I think is part of the Hawaiian culture, but as well for many people who enjoy being by the ocean, enjoy being in the ocean. And I think what you talk about is this whole idea of the healing powers of water at a time when you needed it, that you'd gone from having the need to be very still, as we spoke about in previous episodes, after you found out that Maury was not your father, to now being to move more, to be mindful and to engage in some sort of physical activity.
That's so lovely, honey. Oh, you know, the first thing I think about is that we're all almost, 78, 80%
Yeah. Yeah.
saline solution.
Mm-hmm.
And and where we are birthed, we come from that same kind of fluidity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then again, I'm a Pisces, and so I it just gives me that extra yearning for water in all different ways. But this was such an extreme experience of recovering from a lie that I lived with for so long. And the idea that the vastness of the ocean was accepting all my complex feelings, and kind of in a very interesting way, because there's, when you stay by the shore, there's a rhythm. There's a rhythm of the wave, and it's, I guess, in a way, it lulls you in, to feeling relaxed and maybe trusting the waters, unless it's a rough day. But generally, it wasn't. It was very gentle waves, and it was just something that eased me into this whole new dimension of living in my truth.
And thinking about this idea, for so many people who go and spend a day, on the beach. My one of my friends is very into the beach, and when we went away earlier this year, we spent a lot of time at the beach. And I wasn't usually that kind of person, but then I realized the way that you can just be there all day, and you go into the water for a while, you come out for a while, you sit on the sand, maybe we walked to an island through the water because there was one there, and it was full of well, I guess it was full of seagulls. So, but just this idea of being somewhere where there is that constancy of the tides and the waves, and that idea that there's something bigger than us and more expansive than us, if you just surrender to that. And I do relate to your fear of the water as well, that I'm not necessarily fearful, but I'm not confident. And so, here I am at, what age was I then? I was near 40 at that point. That was only earlier this year. And asking my friends, how do you float? I don't think I actually know how to do this. And they showed me how to do it.
Oh, my goodness. Well, see, it's never too late.
It's never too late. So I look forward to doing that again.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful feeling when you can, as you say, surrender. And maybe that fear, whatever fear you have doesn't attract something that, would cause you harm. But I wonder if I told this story, I'm not sure. So one day there had been quite a storm, and there were 12-foot waves that shifted the coastline. And when Jared and I went walking along the new beach, there were all these tide pools. And in Hawaii, my hair was very long and very thick and very curly. And I'd always have to get it wet before I could, put a brush or a comb through it. So I decided to take advantage of these tide pools, and I brought a brush along with me. And I walked about 15 feet into the ocean, and and all these tide pools, were kind of created by the storm. So I kind of just submerged myself in one of them and wet my hair and started brushing, and I felt this object that was about maybe between 18 and 24 inches, something like that, in length, kind of graze against my ankle. But it was very, very fast. And I thought, well, I knew of the famous fish in Hawaii, the homo homo nuku nuku apu a'a, that was about that size. And it's part of a song,
Try saying that twice.
And so I thought, well, maybe it's that just swam by. But I thought, well, I'm not sure what it is. So I decided to get up and go to the edge of the shore. And as I got out and just stood there and looked out at the ocean, a wave came, and a turtle that was about that size was spread eagle in that wave, as if to say, you were kissed by a turtle. So, I had various experiences like that in Hawaii, and I don't know. I think it's kind of unique in certain bays, depending on the kind of sea creatures that live there, and that are they're kind of curious, it's like, well, wait a minute, who are you and what are you? And then there was the time when the helicopters from the civil service started circling the bay closest to me. And we were notified that a 25-foot white shark mother was giving birth offshore, about
Tremendous.
100 feet offshore. And then tiger sharks, about a half a dozen tiger sharks, were in that same lagoon area, and they were also mother sharks giving birth.
Wow.
So for 10 days, we were told not to enter the water, and we saw the helicopters, just constantly patrolling the area. And then finally, the 10th day came, and we were told, okay, now they're gone. The waters are free for you to re-enter. And it was so awesome to step foot back into the ocean, just knowing who had been there.
Yeah.
And just to make things a little bit more interesting, as I was walking back into the ocean, I saw a black fin.
Oh dear.
And I'm like, I know. And it turned out to be a manta ray that had flipped the side of its wing up, and it looked like I know. I mean, they're friendly to humans, so but they're quite large. And they were patrolling the shore, I guess, once people are not in the ocean, and the ocean is left to who lives there and who are the natural inhabitants. It's a free-for-all. So
well, yeah, absolutely. When we sort of get out the way, then I think it's quite impressive, and just the amount of life and appreciation I think that more and more people are getting, and this realization that it's not one or the other. It's not us being able to have a beach and nothing being in it. It's a whole system that we're interconnected with, and
yes,
completely evocative, and as part of this as well, as you were talking, that idea, I think, leading up to this revelation, there was a lot of changes that you had. There were changes in location, of course, but there were also even changes in relationships. And I'm even thinking, when you were in Hawaii and you found out that yes, it was your teenage boyfriend, but your teenage boyfriend, it came up that he was not being entirely faithful all those years ago. It almost seemed like what was happening is you had to shed a lot of the past and relationships in preparation of this revelation, and then having someone like Jared there as part of a new life, or attracting people or energy that would take you into this new truth.
Yes, Jared, and I practice, an awareness to allow more space, within ourselves, within our, our essence, to, make room for new. And once I started discovering, the past fills you up, and and you really don't have the capacity to grow. It's kind of stifles your growth. And so, but emotions rule, and
yes.
they, sometimes even a bitter memory, can be seen as sacred and something that you hold on to. But, little by little by little, and even now, I still think that, if you have a memory that is so precious, but it's in the form of occupying your mind in a not in such a healthy way, that, there are certain practices of I think maybe we've spoken about this before, but whenever you're in the present state of mind, if you're on a walk or whatever you're doing, that you um, are just in the now. If a thought from the past starts invading and takes over, with some awareness, you can you can observe it. You can first you feel it because you take this deep dive way back when, and but if you can be there and realize, wait a minute, I have to step back, I have to look at it. So I'll observe it. I'm not going to forget the feeling, but I'm not going to let it take up space in me. I want to leave space for the new. And it's not easy. It's a constant practice, because the more you do it, the quicker your awareness kicks in, that you kind of get stuck in that old loop. Or actually, conversely, you might start worrying about the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think so much of what everyone's been through in the last couple of years has been either lots of worry about the future or even, sort of ruminating about things that have happened. And, I think that physicality of doing things is so important, as part of that ability to be in the present. Because like you said, I think it's very easy to, even a bad memory where you think you don't want to hold on to it. Sometimes you do, and you kind of, without realizing it, you keep giving that fire more energy. Which because I don't know whether it gives you, it means that perhaps you haven't worked through it, and that's fair enough. But maybe it also sometimes can give people a bit of an identity as well. What's happened to them can form who they are. And how did I guess leading on from that, and I know we'll talk more about this as this episode as the episodes unfold. But how did you allow yourself not to what this big revelation? How did you allow that not to become a very big part of identity for you?
Well, I just think, like they say, the truth shall set you free. and it's definitely a process. I feel incredibly fortunate that I was led to be with someone, that was honest and trustworthy, and then in a place that was so embracing. And it was a gentle. I could have been in a city hearing sirens and honking all the time, and have to get through that chaos, and maybe I wouldn't have been able to get through it. I don't know. But that's not what the good Lord had in mind for me. I was able to. I was guided to be in a place where I could begin my healing, and and to be with someone that I could heal with, and to be supported by. And it's just, I'm extremely grateful for the gifts that I've received in life, and and I encourage everyone, to see, to acknowledge the light they have within them, and to seek out others that are like-minded, who they sense the same energy. Because what I believe is happening, that has never happened before, after listening to a lot of very wise people talk about these times, that there's a synergy that has never been recorded in history, in caves, in going back as far as anyone could, any scientist could ever research, to have this time in on this planet of such extremes that we can identify toxic behavior in
Mm,
so many ways. So many ways. We could have a discussion about that, but it's so extreme now,
mm,
that you either you have the choice. You just
yeah.
have, each one of us has the choice to go in to our hearts and feel, who we are. And do we come from a place of love, or do we come from a place of fear?
Mm,
And with all of the suggestions of fear, with all the suggestions of love, can each one of us in our own way can purify ourselves to the point where our hearts are open and we live in more of a loving state
mm.
rather than having to struggle, in a state of fear.
Absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, I think it's becoming more and more apparent that that's kind of the choice ultimately, isn't it? More and more, it's about which one do we want to do, and not that that's an easy process, but it's I think keeping that at the heart of everything, for sure.
Yes, and leading into love.
Mm,
Um, my dear friend Todd Hughes, and his beloved have, just ridden this wave of the flow into life, where life takes you, and trusting, that it's exactly where you need to be and what you're going to be doing. So, Todd, being a filmmaker, has now chosen to write his first book.
yes.
And ah, it's so gorgeous that I can't even stand to finish it. It's, I don't want to close the book. I just want to keep that ending as a mystery. But
I
anyway,
did finish it. I was greedy and got to the end. Um,
you're braver than I am.
Well, it's our listeners would remember last time Todd's partner David uh, came on to speak about his book.
99 miles from LA.
Yes, 99 miles from LA, and that was a book noir, I guess. And Todd has done something similar, where his book is a memoir, but it's also a memoir of a relationship he had with a film noir queen from the 1940s and 50s.
Lizabeth
Um,
Scott.
Absolutely, Lizabeth Scott, who many listeners would probably remember because she's quite iconic. And I think the book comes at a time to give her due, because I think sometimes, some of these people do just fall out of the radar. But interestingly, and as we speak about in our conversation with Todd, which we're going to go to now, is this idea that even someone like her, who people might see her as from the 1940s and 50s, and kind of have that image, is that she didn't seem to be someone who lived in the past. She enjoyed her past, I think, but she wasn't living in that past. And I think that's a nice little message to dovetail what we've spoken about today.
I agree. She was in her power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another wish that I have for all of us. So to to be in our own empowerment, and to know ourselves so well that we can live our lives however we do, however we choose, to have that beautiful experience of life, in this particular realm. And then, open our eyes every morning and be grateful that we have another day.
Absolutely. And with that, why don't we go have lunch with Lizabeth?
Oh, that sounds marvelous. Cheers.
I understand. What you're saying is women are made to be loved.
Is that what I'm saying?
Yes, it's a confession that a woman may drive you out of your mind, but you wouldn't trust her. And because you couldn't put her in your pocket, you get all mixed up. You're right about women being made for love.
Yeah. I can see why Johnny loved you.
Welcome back to Love's a Secret Weapon podcast, and joining us again is our good friend, writer and filmmaker, Todd Hughes. Last time Todd joined us, it was with his partner and collaborator, P. David Ebersole, as David was releasing his debut novel, a noir tale of crime and intrigue. Well, Todd joins us today to discuss his debut book, a memoir of his relationship with one of the screen's queens of film noir of the 40s and 50s, Lizabeth Scott. Todd, what a pleasure.
Thank you so much. We're
Welcome,
calling it
honey.
a memoir.
A memoir.
Hi, Donna.
Oh, Todd, it's so wonderful to see you. And I see you, hear you, feel you.
Likewise.
I know. And David as well, please. Long distance hugs and smooches. Have you had monsoon down there?
We had some raininess, but that hurricane missed us.
Oh,
So
thank God.
we
Okay,
had
yeah.
perfect weather.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess, oh gosh, I hate to say this, but I guess we're all getting what we need. Unfortunately, this planet needs to wake up and
Well,
take the right direction. And you and David, I have to share with Dr. Adam and our listeners. You really listen to your heart and your inner voice. And, maybe it was beginning with David's book, that life became art, art reflects life reflects art. Writing his book, and then you literally manifested aspects of it and moved out of the country into a beautiful tropical environment south of the border, and of course shifted into a whole new career out of filmmaking into becoming authors. And it's really a brave move on your part. And congratulations. I have to celebrate with you about your success upon your first release of your beautiful, I even have to say it feels like a diary. I'm just really taken by your writing and the intimate kind of relationship that you drew me into.
oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy you liked it.
And the little things along the way that I related to when you mentioned a restaurant called Nickadel's.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Nickadel's, the restaurant that I used to go to sometimes for lunch when I was making beach party movies, and then another reference, Pat Suzuki.
Right, on the same record label.
With that on Vic, was it?
On Vic, yeah.
And Lizabeth recorded her album on Vic.
She did her one and only album, and it's really good. It's really good.
Because a lot of people wouldn't know. Just to take us back, Lizabeth Scott, I think more rightly so, more recently, is getting credit for being probably one of the, not only most iconic, but one of the best of the film noir women of the 40s and 50s. But to tell our readers about your book, Lunch with Lizabeth, which came out on September 29th, which was the what would have been Lizabeth's 100th birthday. Why, for your first book, which is a memoir of your life and career, but your friendship with this lady, tell us about when you met her and where she was at that period of time.
Well, I became obsessed with her when I first saw her in a movie when I was living in Paris in 1984, a film called Dead Reckoning with Humphrey Bogart. And she seemed, I couldn't believe I had never heard of her. How could she be obscure when she's in movies with Humphrey Bogart and Robert Mitchum? But, it was pre-internet, so it was really hard to find out anything about her. And the more I did, the more fascinated I became. And when I moved to Hollywood in 1986, I knew she was alive and I knew she lived on Hollywood Boulevard. And, just one thing led to another. I don't have it in the book, but I was on Franklin Avenue going to work at the Border Grill from Hollywood, right by AFI. And there was this horrible traffic jam. And I saw a green Jaguar coming closer to me. And I was like, oh my God. And I looked over and it was her. And I was like, I can't believe it. I just landed in Hollywood and here is proof. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And, you know, I wasn't sure it was her until I met her. And then I was like, wow, that is funny, you know. But then eventually I wrote her a fan letter and she invited me out to lunch. And as soon as we met, you know, we were friends until she died.
And I guess at this point, because she hadn't made a film for quite a while, the last film I kind of remember of her was the Elvis film, Loving You. I don't think she'd made too much more after that. So she kind of hadn't been working for some time, but was still within the industry.
You know, no, she retired. And she did a movie in 1972 with Michael Caine called Pulp for Mike Hodges.
Michael Caine, Mickey Rooney, Lizabeth Scott, and a particularly good performance from me. Remember the word, pulp. Feel free to tell all your enemies about it. Yours sincerely, Lionel Stander. Run me off 20 million copies of this pitch.
And she did TV, you know, through the 60s, but she really outlived her fame. You know, by the time, you know, I was going to college and studying film noir, her name didn't come up that often. So
because when we think of film noir, we think of Lauren Bacall.
Well, isn't that funny that they are like hand in hand? They came to Hollywood at almost the same time. They were both discovered by Diana Vreeland. You know, years within.
I loved your initial encounter with her, with Lauren Bacall.
Oh, right. The first star I met is Lauren Bacall. You know, the queen of the movies, the queen of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And she was just such an interesting person.
Yes, and I don't know whether we should. We'll leave that one for the book, because that's kind of what opens your book. But it was an interesting encounter to say, you know, the least. But just to go back a bit, you know, you're a filmmaker, of course, as is David. And where did the love of film noir come from? So from your book, you were initially quite taken with French cinema, and I guess that's why you ended up in France. But what was it about film noir for our listeners who are perhaps not aware of that kind of genre? What was it about that really took you and led you to focus on Lizabeth?
Well, film noir in general was just such a fascinating concept. And, you know, I was learning it from Andrew Sarris and Robert Belton and these people who had studied it. And this is 1981. And Andrew Sarris actually was the person who introduced the concept from the French. It was the French filmmakers who first called it film noir, in the 60s, Godard and those people. But it just represents something really interesting in that movies got a lot more sophisticated and they started to become more realistic and deal with problems. But, you know, it's Hollywood, so they infused it with drama. And whether it was a Western or, you know, a crime drama, it was always about this post-war disillusionment that people were feeling. And, you know, they were willing to go to desperate measures. So ordinary people end up doing really terrible things. And, you know, and then also I'd never seen actors like Robert Mitchum or Gene Tierney before, Rita Hayworth, right? I was sort of raised on just like what you saw on TV, but to discover all these people that were just so amazing, Dan Duryea and Joan Bennett. But anyway, it's just funny because Lizabeth kind of slipped through the cracks. And then when I discovered her, it was something more, right? I fell in love with her.
And the way you describe the heart connection or the soul connection that you had with her, and how it evolved, you know,
Well, it was extraordinary because right at our first meeting, she said, "I believe in fate." And she immediately we were friends. And, everything kind of fell into place. And then we discovered that we're both triskaidekaphiles. And that is, we're lovers of the number 13. And her name, Lizabeth Scott, has 13 letters. And it's like, is that why you dropped the E?
Oh.
And, she was fun because she was not consistent. And she would tell stories different ways. But she told me once that she did drop the E from Elizabeth to be Lizabeth Scott because of 13. And her favorite aunt, that is a nun that she almost followed in her footsteps, is born on August 13th, which is my birthday.
Okay.
So we had a lot of things like that. And we did have nights where we both thought about each other and we called the next day. Right. So we did have a psychic connection.
I've got to ask, the 13, and what is significant about 13? Because I've got a recurring, and I haven't looked too much into this, but in my family and in my life, I've got a recurring 25 for some reason. It comes up a lot. So what is 13?
Well, I was born on the 13th, and it's been my lucky number. Friday the 13th is always very lucky for me, which makes me it's called a frigatriskaidekaphile. It's a lover of Friday the 13th. But I must say, when I met her, it was even more reinforced. And there is a book called 13, which I gave her a copy of, which explains why the number 13 is so significant in our culture and why it's considered unlucky. And, it's endlessly fascinating. And, I gave her a copy, and that was one thing we talked about for a while, the merits of 13.
Yeah, because you go into an elevator and there's no 13.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Does the book have that answer, or does it have a comment?
No, but it does tell the name of that book that does.
Okay. We'll dig a little deeper.
Well, yeah, because I'm when you said with Lizabeth how some of her stories were kind of, I guess, inconsistent, or she had different explanations. Do you think that was coming from where she had under the studio system and where people were invented to be these particular types of characters? And in her case, she was. Will tell us about how was she kind of promoted at that time when she was making films in the 40s and the 50s?
Well, she started at the top. So Hal Wallace was at Warner Brothers, right? He was the one who put Warner Brothers on the map with Betty Davis and Humphrey Bogart. He made all those gritty dramas, but he made Casablanca. And so when the Warner Brothers, when it won Best Picture, the Warner Brothers wouldn't let him accept the Academy Award. He was the producer. They said, it's our studio. And he got fed up and he left. And he started his own independent production company. Right. And the first person he signed was Lizabeth Scott. Footnote, they were flirting and they fell in love pretty quickly. So, there was more to the offer than just a movie career. Right. But he went out on a limb for her. She was a star in her first film. In her second film, she's got her name above the title with Barbara Stanwyck. And
that was that the Martha Ivers?
Strange Loves of Martha Ivers. Yeah. And Barbara Stanwyck actually went so far as to serve Hal Wallace with a letter saying, "How dare you put your girlfriend above the title next to me? She's not a star of our stature." And he wrote back and said, "I produced the movie." And that was that. And, they ended up being friends, Lizabeth and Barbara. Not friends, but they were friendly.
Yeah. And do you think that was because when you watch some of her films, it's easy sometimes when you don't, you put these people in certain boxes. But in her case, she had real talent.
She did. And, it's not like, what's extraordinary is that she took it very seriously, and she was in New York. And, her first big break was she was Tallulah Bankhead's understudy in The Skin of Our Teeth on Broadway.
I love it.
This is with Frederick March. Another young kid in the company is Montgomery Clift.
Love him.
And Tallulah Bankhead never misses a performance and is furious that she has an understudy. But the producer, who also was might have been romantically involved with Lizabeth, put her there to keep her on her guard. But it is because for Hal Wallace, this happened twice. Someone from his camp happened to be in the audience after Tallulah Bankhead left. She was Miriam Hopkins' understudy. But she went on one night for Miriam Hopkins, and someone from Hal Wallace was there and said, "Oh my God, she's amazing."
Who discovered me? My God. I was discovered by Hal Wallace, but before that, I was discovered by a Mike Meyerberg, who is the producer of Skin of Our Teeth. And I had a very small part in Skin of Our Teeth on Broadway. Tallulah Bankhead was the star. And he made me understudy. I'd just done one thing on the road, which was Hellzapoppin'. I was the actress in Hellzapoppin' with Billy House and Eddie Garr. It was like like the 19th Company. But it was a great experience because I went to 63 cities in the United States, and that was quite an experience. Then I came back and I got Skin of Our Teeth. In the meantime, I did summer stock. I modeled for Harper's Bazaar, that sort of thing.
And then, Hal Wallace, he did that later. He went to New York to see the Pajama Game, and Carol Haney was sick, and Shirley MacLaine subbed for her. And he signed her that night and immediately loaned her to Alfred Hitchcock at a different studio for all his money. And then, they did not have a good relationship. But, she encountered Lizabeth when she got to Hollywood, right? And knew she was Hal Wallace's girlfriend.
It's interesting how Tallulah Bankhead made sure probably that she never was going to be missing a performance so that Lizabeth could go on in her place.
Right. This one guy started a rumor that All About Eve was based on them, but it's not true.
Right. So they were implying that Lizabeth was kind of the Eve character.
Yes.
I have a question about Lizabeth and your observation, because you knew her for what, over a decade?
20 years.
20 years. So it just strikes me that she kept up a consistent relationship with Hal Wallace. And that would give her a sense of autonomy to not be, Barbara Stanwyck having to just take it on the chin, I'm the boss, so step back. Right. That gives you a lot of strength. Not that it seems like Lizabeth had a very strong character about her, and that it could have come from that sense of independence and not a need. Am I anywhere?
I think you're right. It's funny because I've seen her movies a lot, and you start to see these moments where how Wallace is off camera, and you've never seen someone more ecstatically happy, right? She loved every minute of it because she could do it, right? She could hold her own with Barbara Stanwyck. She was wonderful and professional. And, she said the first time she encountered unprofessionalism was when she worked with Humphrey Bogart in her third film, replacing Rita Hayworth at a different studio at Columbia. But, she said Bogey had it in his contract that he worked 9 to 5. And that meant he got there at 10. And by noon, he had heard his lines, and it was lunch. And then at 1, they'd get the shot off. And she said she didn't care because she was used to let's go. And she knew that they were at his, he could do whatever he wanted.
And do you think, because as we've mentioned at the time, you knew her career, had done Sash essentially. What kind of led to that happening? Was it just like many of these people who burned very brightly and kind of just dissipated, or did she make a decision to move out of pictures? What was the reason?
Yes, she did. She was under contract to Hal Wallace for a long time. And they they cut it off because she needed romance in her life. So she started dating, and they stayed very close friends. But, she just said the movies were getting so mediocre. And she loved making films so much, and so it was killing her to have to put all that energy into a film that no one was that excited about. And she just said, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. And Al Wallace also had made her independently wealthy at that point, so she could do whatever she wanted.
Right. Yes, that's what I was going to ask, is that when you met her, she was able to do that because she had been made wealthy from those pictures.
She said the first time we went out to lunch at Musso and Frank, she picked up the check and she said, "Good thing I'm rich. I don't know what I'd do if I had to work for a living. Maybe I'd be a gymnast. I'm very limber."
That's fantastic.
She was 75.
She's a strong woman. And you described her, like from the back, she could have been ageless.
She had a great figure, and she really kept it. And so, she filled out her genes. She did not look like an old lady. But,
I can relate.
And she once almost canceled a dinner on us because she had a blemish that we couldn't even see. But she would say, "I'm vain, forgive me."
Oh. And tell me, and please tell our listeners about how you would meet every birthday. And literally, she had accumulated a collection from you toward the end.
Well, she created a hobby for herself, which was collecting glass animals. And before we got into that, we had kind of interesting gifts we were giving back and forth. She loved to dress me up, and she loved to give me birthday presents that were like sweaters from Ralph Lauren and really preppy stuff. But me and David started getting her glass animals for her menagerie, which she had a huge collection. And we just get whatever was new at Swarovski's and send it to her. But she always sent back like a detailed, like 1, 2, 3-page letter about the creature coming into her menagerie. She gave them all voices and behaviors.
What an incredible experience having a relationship with someone that, that unique. And I tell you, Todd, I can't finish your book because I don't want it to end.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's funny because the story continues. I'm just so excited that I've been able to tell this story and that enough people know who she is that, it will be of interest. So.
Yeah.
Well, sweetheart, though, personally, not to minimize who you were in love with, but the way you express yourself, the way you describe your heart, and it's like I say, it feels like a diary. I feel like I'm a voyeur in experiencing the incredible passion and love that you had for her. And if this book is any indication of what you've got coming in the future, I can't wait.
Oh, yay, that's so nice. Thank you.
And the book is climbing the charts on Amazon already. It's only been out for a few days now, but I think, as you said, Todd, and as you're saying, Donna, this idea that I think people get excited that they've heard a lot about the so-called big stars, and there's a lot of that out there. But for fans of film and film noir and these sorts of people, for so long there hasn't been a lot. And so to have someone who has researched this person, but also who knew her, it adds a dimension of something that I think a lot of fans wouldn't have thought was going to be out there. You talk in your book, Todd, about this, in the pre-internet age where fans of film would, scour books like Halliwell's Film Goer's Companion, which I've still got my copies of those books on my shelf as well.
Right.
Looking for those little tidbits about an actress or an actor that you liked, and it might just be one sentence and or a couple of lines back then, and kind of I think now the excitement is, yes, we have the internet, but to have these stories about people who we didn't think we would find out more about her life after she left film, I think is a real gift for fans.
Besides all of the encyclopedic information about films that, I would never know about.
Well, I like that it gave me a chance to do a compendium of a lot of my favorite things, right? So I talk a lot about film noir and my favorite film noirs and, what led me to Lizabeth and Veronica Lake and all of them. And, it was a travelogue, and I don't know, it was really fun. And there was a whole chapter about, not a chapter, but a side note about Donna, because I was talking about how important records were to me. And then when I got to New York, I found just, I wandered into a store and there was an unopened copy of Songs from Beach Blanket Bingo, right, on Capitol, unopened, by Donna Loren. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that existed. And it was $60. And I was like, I can't spend that much on a record. That's how much I have for like the week or something. And then I bought it. I bought it. Now I'm talking to Donna right now.
Oh, Todd, it's truly so precious to be loved and to express love with you and with David, and now to include our dear Dr. Adam in our, how do you say that? It's not a menage a trois. We have to add a fourth.
A fourth, I'm not sure.
A 4G.
Oh, okay. A 4G.
That's so Hollywood.
Right.
That's the other thing, isn't it? That Donna, I don't know about you, but when you're reading Todd's book about mentions of like Musso and Frank's, or the Nicodelle, these restaurants, these places that are very Los Angeles. I think even Donna, was one of your vocal teachers Harriet Lee?
Yes, that was another coincidence. Unbelievable. I mean, but I sought Harriet Lee out after I was married, and I just had my second child, and I thought, well, I would like to exercise my vocal cords a little bit, because I was full-time, mother and housewife at that point. And yes, I went to Harriet Lee as Lizabeth found her as well, right?
He's a man, at times he goes astray, seems so unfair, but a man is made that way. What can I do? What else is there to say? He is a man, that's all.
Yeah. And the same time I was going to Harriet, she was grooming Lucy Arnaz for Broadway.
Oh wow!
In a play called Seesaw, and I happened to venture into that songbook as well. But yeah, no, Pat Suzuki actually. I used to listen to Mahalia Jackson when I was young, and I used to sing along with Edie Gourmet. And from those two, I would select songs to, kind of adopt for my performances. Well, Pat Suzuki had the same pitch, the same range, the same contralto. And so that's where I learned from this moment on. And I used to incorporate that in my book, live performances for Dr. Pepper or
Oh, wow.
wherever.
Howdy, everybody, and welcome. A short time ago, I had the pleasure of introducing a young lady with a tremendous voice. And since that time, she's become one of the nation's new recording stars. And here she is, Miss Ponytail herself, Pat Suzuki.
From this moment on, you for me, dear, only to put me, dear, from this moment on. This happy day, no more this song, only hoop-de-doo song, from this moment on. For you got the love I need so much, got the skin I love to touch, got the arms to hold it tight, got the lips to kiss me goodbye. From this moment on.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned Pat Suzuki because she was on the same label.
Right. I can't wait to get, the only thing we haven't unpacked are our records, but we're having a record shelf built, so we'll have them by the end of the month. But I can't wait to get out my Pat Suzuki and listen again. Thinking about you.
Vinyl. Oh my gosh, yeah. You must come and visit me. This is like vinyl heaven over here. It's crazy. But yeah, you'll and with the sound that I hear from where you're speaking, the acoustics are going to be insane when you start playing your music and set your speakers up.
Oh, the audio guy was here today. The people who lived here before were paving the way. The house is wired, so there's music in every room. It's fantastic. And they got it all working today.
That is wonderful, sweetheart. Oh my gosh. So, and aside from, do you have another like book tour in mind, or do you have?
Well, we're going to be there in California in December, and so we're doing lunch with Todd at the V Wine Lounge on December 10th.
Oh, perfect.
With dear James Mortensen.
Yes.
And then on December 15th, I will be reading at Book Soup at 7 p.m.
Oh, that's major.
Great. That's
so, we were trying to get, we'll see, there might be something else, but we have those two for sure.
Well, excuse me, I was just going to say for everyone, when you go on Instagram, and are you also on TikTok?
No, just Instagram.
Okay, well, I would advise you to go on TikTok because the ads that you put on for promoting the book are so exquisite. I feel like I'm sitting in a miniature theater and the curtains open and there's the film, that you're just giving us glimpses of your dear Lizabeth.
That was really fun to do, right? To take the time to really think about something more from the film. And I found some great little clips of her too.
Fantastic. And now that both David, as we mentioned, had written his book, which we spoke about in our previous episode with both of you, and now you've written your book, do you both have your computers or your typewriters in the same room and you're just sitting there researching and writing? Is it what's the process?
Well, it's a new environment. And we have been so consumed with this it's a very old house. And, just getting it set up the way we wanted. We replaced the appliances and, things break and we had a leak and blah, 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 blah. But now we're sitting down and, finding the room, I think, but we're both writing, which is terrific. And I think it's been very creatively stimulating to be in this new culture and, in this new environment.
Yes.
And so both of us have a good foothold on, we're into the next thing. So
fantastic. And just to take us back, where are you? Tell our listeners where you're living now, because in our previous episode, I think both of you were just about to move.
Yes, we were living in Palm Springs, and we moved to Merida in the state of Yucatan in Mexico, which is on the Yucatan Peninsula. So it's on the Gulf of Mexico. It's down like closer to Cuba, actually. It's a 2-hour flight from Miami. So, the hurricane missed us. It was supposed to come here.
Yeah. Wow. And it's so funny you say that, because where you are, we watched The Amazing Race Australia, and they were there in a couple of episodes ago. So they've been in Mexico, and we saw the exact place you're talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. It's a real convergence here. We keep meeting really interesting people, and people are drawn here clearly for, its connections to the beginning, the Mayan culture. It's where the asteroid hit the Earth 66 million years ago, right? Which started this age. And I don't know. But it's a very, very old city. It's urban, it's like living downtown.
Wow, that's interesting, isn't it? So you've got the Mayan, you've probably got the Spanish influence, and as you said, just the center of kind of the beginning. And I think you raise a really good point. You're saying you're meeting so many interesting people, but I think it's about being open to that. And I think both you and David do that. You bring people together, and I think the reason that perhaps you and Lizabeth might have met not randomly, but through you writing a letter, but the fact you could form that relationship, and you talk about in your book how it wasn't just you did have disagreements about different things, whether it was politics or things like that, but to be able to develop that friendship over that time, I think shows what sort of people you are, where you have passions, you have interests, and that draws people together, I think.
You're a global citizen.
I could tell you were talking about me because you were saying such nice things, so I thought I'd join for a second.
Hi, David. Welcome, darling.
It was all that flattery that brought me over.
Are you learning the language over there?
No, that brought me over to the computer to join you.
I know.
Like a moth to the flame,
My Spanish is pretty good, so I've been flexing that muscle, and it's been really fun to communicate and bring it back alive, because when I got here, I was a little bit afraid that I didn't know enough, and I'm doing pretty well. Like, I can get through most conversations. What happens is, when you express yourself in Spanish and you sound pretty good at it, then they go really fast. then you're like staring at them thinking, I have no idea what just got said. And you just have to slow down. You just have to get rid of your fear and say, I'm sorry I didn't understand, and back it up a little.
When you've used up all your language, and they they don't realize that that's all you've got.
But I think the eye contact, everyone can kind of associate the depth of your sincerity, with eye contact, and language is almost superficial, and they feel your heart and they feel your sincerity. So,
too, the people here are extraordinary. So nice. So,
it's a vortex. I really want to, kind of in behalf of the message that we're trying to convey with Love's a Secret Weapon, that each one of us have our own little satellites that we're emanating our true love for life and beauty and the planet and all life on the planet. And each little satellite, wherever you are, molecularly, will connect together ultimately and reach that tipping point, so that we can all feel that same kind of community of love and overcome all of these crazy obstacles that we're going through now.
I think as you're saying that, Donna, I'm just thinking of, and I want to ask Todd and David this, but you've both made a change recently from many years of work as filmmakers, and now you're both writing, you're both releasing books that are being very well received. What advice, if you do have advice for people listening who are thinking of maybe making a big life change but are not quite sure, what advice or what can you give them to share your experiences?
Well, you make a big life change, but also life doesn't change. You're changing. So, but it's funny, you make a leap of faith like that, and we've got 3 very amazing films now that we're attached to. None of them are a go yet, but they all could go, and if they did, each and every one is fabulous, and we'd be back doing what we were doing. But so I'm glad we made this change, and I think everyone should.
A long time ago, when I lived in the East Village, I bought a T-shirt that said "Change is good," and I think so many people think of change as something to be afraid of, and that's falling apart, or that you're going to lose something, or whatever it might be. But change is really the way forward in life.
Yeah, and may I also add that change is also felt like the unknown, and there's so much uncertainty, and so when you enter the unknown, or let's say you seek a new adventure, that you begin to heighten your awareness and rely on trust. You trust yourself, your inner voice that's guiding you to take you where you need to go, and just keep your heart open, and
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think you also suddenly have your eyes open in ways that you don't when life is something that you're marching through and that you're used to, your path. And as soon as you kind of throw it all, upside down and do something completely different with yourself, I feel like you have this opportunity to see anew. And being people who are now sort of trying to do this thing about writing books and writing from yourself, using yourself to write, it's so great to have this world that we're looking at through completely new eyes. It makes you very
Yes, and it's about growth potential, because when you do get too comfortable, you just kind of stagnate a bit. So
we live in the oldest part of the city, the commercial part of the city. So our water pipes are the originals from whenever they put them in, 1900. I have no idea. But, so you really start to appreciate conservation, right? Because we have plenty of water, but we don't get it like we used to. And
darling, my source of water is rain.
Right.
Nice. I like that.
But anyway, it's just nice to go, wow, the American culture is so geared towards, consumerism, waste, excess. And just in the little things. And when you kind of simplify like this, your perspective changes. And
yes, I agree.
You become more observant.
Well, also 24/7 access, like the idea that you can just have water anytime you want, in your house in the United States. And here we just have to be aware. It's not like there isn't enough. It's just that it comes in from the street into a cistern, and if you use it all,
you're done. Or if you have a leak.
Well, we had it.
Or if a bus is too tall and goes by and knocks out your power.
Okay, that happened.
Oh boy. Well, I tell you, living on rainwater, I have a rain stick by the door, which I'm like a crazy woman sometimes. I've only been here in this region for a short time, but when you really do have to look up and connect with the infinite and connect with the cosmos, and when that rain comes, and you turn the faucet on, or you have that water to drink, I have to tell you guys a cute story. My dear Jared had a visit from his son recently, who brought his 8-year-old daughter with him, and she fell in love with the rainwater. So she was filling her glass up and drinking it every day. And when it came time for her to go home, she filled up 2 bottles, and she thought she was going to take her rainwater with her. And at the airport, they made her spill it out, and she was devastated. So her mom, texts me back and says, Arwen is just heartbroken. So I found a little glass flask and I filled it up with rainwater and put it in a box with lots of bubble wrap and sent it off to her. And she was so thrilled to get a little bottle of rainwater.
Oh.
That's very cute.
So, like what you're saying, materialism all over the world is really shifting back to the essentials.
Absolutely, absolutely, and thinking about this new life, this new excitement, and just reminding our listeners to check out both of your books. I'm just on Instagram at the moment looking at a review that Donna put me onto about Lunch with Lizabeth from Michael Childers, who is a very well-known, iconic person in their own right. But he says of your book, let me see. Once upon a time in Hollywood, there were strong, mysterious, smoky screen sirens like Veronica Lake, Gloria Graham, Barbara Stanwyck, Lauren Bacall, and the queen of film noir, Lizabeth Scott, subject of Todd Hughes' glorious new book, an homage to old Hollywood and his friend Miss Scott, a great star who had raucous and witty stories about the industry in her day. For lovers of classic Tinseltown stories and film noir, this book is a must read. Now that must feel pretty good.
Hurrah!
Oh yes, from Michael? Are you kidding? That was quite a thrill. Also, Michael is so good, right? He gives you the pull quote, like a must read.
A must.
Well,
some people know to do
that. Everyone in Hollywood. So he's one of those people who knows that world, and had he read it and was, sort of, I don't know, bored or angered by it, he would have let us know. So it's a high compliment for Todd. Yeah.
No, he was so sweet. We were actually on the road, and I gave it to him, and like 3 or 4 days later, he called me and just said, "I'm like halfway through, and I'm loving it." So I thought that was really nice.
That's great.
Absolutely.
They're both. I was just going to say, Donna, they're both page turners. Both David's book, 99 Miles from LA, which we spoke about last time, and the same with Todd's book. You can savor them if you want, but I kind of got through them really quickly because I wanted to see what happened. And David, just to bring in your book, how's that doing at the moment?
It's done really well. We ended up on the bestseller list for independent publishers. It's all just a little company that could, Telekinesis, who's put the book out. They put both of our books out. So the way the book industry works these days is that unless you're with the top 5 publishing entities, it's very hard to get your book out. So it's really about word of mouth and putting in the effort and telling your friends and, et cetera. And so that we were able to score at that level was really, really encouraging. It's interesting. It's fun now with a book because different than a movie, it's just there for people. I mean, movies are there for people too. You can always go get them on, streaming services, etc. But something about a book and knowing that it's just in certain bookstores and people can hear about it and buy it and, it lives on. It's really a great and different feeling.
Yeah, and it's the charm of that intimacy when, there's no one interpreting for you. It's how it makes you feel. And like I said, I have kept your book on my bed with my little bookmarker toward near the end, but it's going to stay there because I don't want it to end.
Or you could just flip it over and start again.
Well, it was amazing because the copy you read too was, I think, I had 2 more opportunities to make changes. So I got in some amazing things right at the very end, caught some, bad language and typos
to the end, and then you still find them in the book.
You do. I know that one very well.
Yes.
Well, mine's not perfect.
But the publisher, I thought, just did such a magnificent job. I just love the pictures and the way they look and the way he laid it out.
Oh, definitely. Well, I love being able to browse through, throughout the book and have photographs and visuals. So it's nice because so many books they wait till the center and collect them, and this way you're always given a visual treat, to see what you're talking about and be reminded who she is.
It's funny because I thought that's what it was going to be, was in the center, and then on the special paper, an insert with photographs and color and whatnot. But then we were doing a megaspective with Mary Warrenoff in Palm Springs.
Yes.
And the paperback version of her book, Swimming Underground, I was looking at it, and they did that kind of thing where there was a full page photo and then the chapter started. I was like, that's really nice.
Yeah.
So that's what we modeled it after.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, you guys, you don't feel so far away. I can kind of get a waft of the chili peppers from down south.
It's always such a pleasure to speak to both of you, and you're welcome back whenever you want to talk about something. And this is just a very, very exciting time, I think, for both of you, and to remind our listeners to please go and check out both of these books that we've spoken about today, because you will really enjoy them and you're in for a treat.
And the energy of love that you both project into your writing just is exactly where we're all at. So thank you so much, Todd. Mwah. And David.
Thank you, Dr. Adam. Thank you, Donna. Kiss to Jared Forrest, too.
Okay. Lots of hugs and smooches.
Love to you. Bye-bye.
Adios.
Venus must have heard my plea. She has sent someone along for me. A long, long time for somebody to call my